Om Mani Padme Hum. Hello, dear YouTube Sangha. Welcome to episode 5 of Dispelling Individualism. Today I will be discussing the origin of many of America's individualistic tendencies and beliefs. This episode will be an archaeology of America's deeply held and lesser understood traits. I think understanding these traits and cultural memes will give us the knowledge needed to be more effective as engaged citizens. So without further ado, let's get into it. In the contemporary discourse surrounding American identity, economic systems and social structures, the threads of individualism, neoliberal corporatism, and post-capitalism intricately weave a narrative deeply rooted in historical, philosophical doctrines like social Darwinism. This video explores the notion that modern American individualism can be traced back to these earlier ideological memes and how they manifest through systemic social issues. A lineage of thought connecting social Darwinism to fascism, Nazism, and even America's own eugenics movement illuminates how these ideas recur in today's right-wing populism. Emerging alongside this are phenomena such as escalating xenophobia, the scapegoating of intellectuals, and the idolization of corporate elites, hallmarks of what Umberto Eco termed Ur-Fascism. At the heart of contemporary American culture lies a fervent belief in the individual. Rooted deeply in neoliberal tenets, individualism champions personal advantage, entrepreneurial spirit, and self-reliance. George Monbiot describes neoliberalism as a project for restoring the power of economic elites. This doctrine does not merely advocate for free markets, but insists that individuals alone bear responsibility for their socio-economic condition, a belief that outlines a stark separation between successful and unsuccessful individuals. The legacy of early socio-biological thought continues to echo in such an individualistic ethos. Friedrich Nietzsche, though not a proponent of social Darwinism, laid philosophical groundwork that would later be co-opted to justify this ideology. Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch, often misinterpreted as an endorsement of elitism, has been alarmingly consumed by movements espousing social Darwinism and eugenicist ideals. In the US, the eugenics movement during the early 20th century reflected these social Darwinist principles and was predicated on the belief that certain individuals should be encouraged to breed while others should not. This in turn was co-opted with concepts of state building such as the manifest destiny and innumerable policy trends that can only be described as what historian Alexis de Tocqueville coined as American exceptionalism during his field research in 1831. Geographer and philosopher Pyotr Kropotkin argued against social Darwinism, that competition forges the emergence of elites and that it's up to the whimsy of elites as to whether they undermine the lower classes. In Mutual Aid, a Factor of Evolution, arguing that cooperation and altruism are as crucial to human evolution as competition. Kropotkin's ideas stand in stark opposition to the individualism propagated by social Darwinism, positing that societal success hinges upon mutual aid rather than relentless self-interest. This divergence illustrates the ongoing battle between two competing paradigms, with modernity trending towards the more nefarious interpretations that privilege individual accomplishment at the expense of collective responsibility. The tail ends of social Darwinism culminated in ideologies that justified authoritarian governance, most notably fascism and Nazism. Both utilized the ideas of racial purity and superiority, a direct application of social Darwinism, to rationalize their geopolitical and social policies. Hannah Arendt's reflections in the origins of totalitarianism remind us that totalitarian regimes deploy a mythical narrative that frames the world in terms of hierarchies nurtured by social evolution, the very tenets put forth by social Darwinists. The historian Tony Judt, in his work Post-War, A History of Europe Since 1945, discusses how European fascism relied on a nationalist narrative that scapegoated perceived threats to the nation's integrity, echoing the social Darwinist idea that the fittest must prevail. By framing societal discord in terms of survival of the fittest, fascist regimes deftly diverted attention from systemic failures and instead targeted marginalized groups as the source of societal ills. In America, eugenic policies in the early 20th century exhibited similar tendencies and had their history deeply rooted in slavery. Initiated as part of a broader response to immigration, these policies sought to purify the gene pool, thus reinforcing the idea that certain groups were inferior to others, particularly people of color. This application of social Darwinism manifested legally, for instance, through sterilization laws aimed at those deemed unfit. The American Eugenics Society, formed in 1922, clearly articulated a philosophy aligned with social Darwinist thought, the propagation of a, quote, better gene pool through selective breeding. The ideologies ingrained in social Darwinism and eugenics resonate within the current atmosphere of rising right-wing populism in the United States. Elements commonly associated with this movement include a resurgence of nationalism, a breakdown of outward empathy, and an increasing tendency to scapegoat the, quote, other, particularly immigrants, as a source of economic and social strife. As noted by Noam Chomsky, current political rhetoric often emphasizes the notion of national sovereignty being threatened by immigration, effectively framing newcomers as parasitic entrants into a battle for resources. Umberto Eco, in his essay Ur-Fascism, deftly identified 13 characteristics of fascism, one of which encompasses disdain for the weak. This disdain fuels xenophobic policies that unjustly target immigrants, both legal and illegal, casting them as the primary adversaries to American prosperity. Furthermore, this framework draws from the social Darwinist idea that only those who earn their place have the right to remain, inherently ranking individuals based on arbitrary social constructs rather than collective human dignity. In contemporary America, this perspective manifests not only through immigration policies, but also in broader social attitudes that vilify intellectuals and experts. Following a narrative similar to that espoused by fascist regimes, right populism often posits intellectualism as elitist and disconnected from the common person. This scapegoating aligns with the tradition of social Darwinism, whereby intellectuals are derided as responsible for their dissenting opinions, and whom are marked with a scarlet letter of treason. This is framed as if those whom care most for all of Americans and would-be Americans are not advocates for Americans. The contradiction writes itself. Scholars such as Michel Foucault have similarly observed how discourse shapes societal norms, suggesting that the construction of knowledge can wield power over how groups are perceived and treated, and this has implications in how knowledge is both denigrated and hoarded by right populists. The knowledge that is complex and inconvenient for their policymaking is shrouded in doubt and suspicion, while the knowledge of key data is sequestered for the purpose of manipulation. Aligning with the narrative of individualism, there has been a conspicuous celebration of corporate elites, revered as epitomes of success within the neoliberal framework. This idolization often leads to a cult of personality around wealthy entrepreneurs, figures who are celebrated as examples of the, quote, American dream. The notion that anyone can achieve success through hard work reinforces a mythology that overlooks systemic barriers confronting marginalized communities. Echo's characteristic of selective populism captures this contradiction, in which a facade of democratization veils underlying elitism. The celebration of corporate success feeds into systemic inequalities, revealing how deeply entrenched corporate power is in shaping public policies that favor the wealth of select few while detrimentally affecting wider society. This corporate elitism aligns closely with Foucault's analysis of power relations. Economic elites exert influence over political structures, steering the discourse in ways that reinforce their own status at the cost of collective well-being. Economists such as Richard Wolff argue that this neoliberal trajectory has overlooked the importance of social structures in favor of individualistic pursuits, thereby exacerbating existing inequalities within the United States. The historical lineage connecting these current trends to social Darwinism highlights that the individualism championed by American neoliberalism is often a veneer for systemic inequality, concealed from those who passionately buy into the myths of meritocracy. The intertwining of individualism, neoliberal corporatism, and historical ideologies like social Darwinism has emerged as a significant force in shaping contemporary right populism. From a Buddhist perspective, the rise of these ideologies poses a clear and present danger, not only to marginalized communities, but to the fabric of society as a whole. Engaged Buddhists, drawing upon the teachings of compassion and interconnectedness, must recognize the urgency of taking action against such divisive currents. The Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh said that the greatest gift is the ability to truly give of oneself. Such a principle runs counter to the narratives espoused by right populism, which often emphasizes self-interest and competition over community and compassion. This philosophy cultivates an environment where xenophobia and hostility thrive, mislabeling individuals as enemies rather than recognizing our shared humanity. When we fail to see our interconnectedness, we foster an atmosphere where one's suffering becomes another's indifference, implicitly permitting discrimination against immigrants, intellectuals, and marginalized groups. Engaged Buddhists must confront these challenges with awareness and empathy. Bhikkhu Sujato articulates that the Dharma teaches us to see clearly what is happening, to understand the suffering caused by oppression and greed. The normalization of scapegoating reflects a deep-seated denial of our collective responsibility. Acknowledging this reality is crucial. The spread of hatred and division does not only affect those directly targeted, but erodes the well-being of society at large. By engaging with those affected and amplifying their voices, we reaffirm the Buddhist commitment to alleviating suffering. Moreover, the rise of corporate elitism within right populism undermines the ethical foundations of society. Jack Kornfield notes that practicing compassion and wisdom is not merely a personal endeavor, it awakens our ability to act for the benefit of all beings. This call to action is pertinent as engaged Buddhists advocate for social justice and economic equity. When corporate power is left unchecked, the inequalities replicate the very structures of domination that Buddhism seeks to dismantle. To combat these pernicious ideologies, engaged Buddhists can embody compassion through direct action, advocacy, and dialogue, initiating conversations that bridge divides and foster mutual understanding, can weaken the grip of fear that enables xenophobia. Support for inclusive policies and communities creates spaces where diverse voices can flourish, affirming the principle of interbeing, the understanding that we are the world and we are in this together. The rise of right populism, fueled by ideologies rooted in individualism and systemic oppression, poses a significant threat to the collective welfare of society. By reaffirming our commitment to compassion, understanding, and collective responsibility, we can pave the way for a society built on the principles of interconnectedness and mutual respect. It is through such engagement that we fulfill the Buddha's teachings, promoting peace and harmony for all beings. Well, dear YouTube Sangha, this was a longer video, and I didn't split it up into subsections because I thought that it would be actually a better way to digest in this format. If you like what you got out of this, please leave a like. If you have any comments or questions, please leave a comment. I would actually appreciate more engagement from you. If you are feeling any form of anxiety, or if you're feeling like the current events are dissuading you or making you feel less emboldened in your practice, please let me know. I am more than happy to engage with all of you, and we are all in this together. Well, my friends, if you made it this far, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu to you.